It is time for a new episode of Get Your Hands Dirty. So join us as we fire up these engines.
2020 actually was our foray into modern racing. We had one of our vintage clients, and he was talking about how he wanted to go and do the 24 Hours of Daytona. And we're like, okay, cool. The classic 24 Hours of Daytona, which is kind of similar. You just use vintage cars and you do 4 one-hour races over a 24-hour period. But he didn't mean that race. He meant the actual 24 Hours of Daytona.
I am really excited to have Sarah Tilley here for our very, very first Get Your Hands Dirty podcast. We are kicking this back up for our Athenians, and we're really excited to have the Daytona 24 LMP2 winner here with us. And Sarah, tell everyone a little bit more about what you do and like all of the fun that you have at the racetrack, because this is a big story.
So I'm one of the co-owners of IRA Motorsport. We're an LMP2 team. We're based in Indianapolis, and we just race cars. So we do everything from the current LMP2 class down to some vintage events. So there's a lot of work that goes into it, but it's actually a lot of fun as well.
So both of our companies are basically the same age. And a lot of people, when they see what we've done and what you're doing and like all of the attention that we have managed to get for both of our companies, they think, oh, you've been around for a long time. Oh, yeah, whatever. Tell everybody the story of when you started, because it's very similar to my story.
Absolutely. So we started IRA Motorsport in 2018. We had a client who wanted, my husband is my co-owner, and he wanted him to drive the car, and my husband wasn't quite happy with the preparation on it. And he said, well, if you can do better, why don't you start your own prep shop? So we did. And it's kind of gone from there. We went from one car and a single car trailer and a borrowed workshop. And then we outgrew that within 2 months. We moved into a 3,000 square foot workshop. We outgrew that one within 3 months, and we moved into, I think it was 12,000. We actually just bought another business. So or not another building. And we're currently outfitting that right now. So we have 6 LMP2 cars plus a lot of vintage cars that we run. And we've just kind of grown and grown and grown. So 2018 was when we had our first vintage car, and then 2020 actually was our foray into modern racing. We had one of our vintage clients, and he was talking about how he wanted to go and do the 24 Hours of Daytona. And we're like, okay, cool. The classic 24 Hours of Daytona, which is kind of similar. You just use vintage cars and you do 4 one-hour races over a 24-hour period. But he didn't mean that race. He meant the actual 24 Hours of Daytona. So we went from vintage cars to, in 2 months, we had the end of October, so November and December, to prepare an entire LMP2 team and roll out with a car that we'd never tested before. And we actually wound up on the podium that year. So I guess we did something right.
Yeah, you definitely did something right.
Some people chase this win for a lifetime. It's exhausting, cruel, and unforgiving for mistakes. No surprise, it is one of the most prestigious motor races in the world. We, the people of IRA Motorsport, in only 4 years managed to win the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Twice.
Wins, but you're not just here in the United States, you're an international team too. So talk more about that, because when I heard that, I was like,
so we have a vintage workshop over in the UK, which is actually going to expand possibly next year into doing modern racing also. And we've done Le Mans, the actual Le Mans 24 Hours of Le Mans, and we did Asian Le Mans series as well. So we won the Pro-Am class in LMP2 and our first ever race in the Asian Le Mans series. So that was pretty exciting. It was during COVID, but luckily, being a sports team, we were still able to travel. So we spent 2 weeks in Dubai and then 2 weeks in Abu Dhabi. and we won, I think, every single race. So we wound up with the championship there as well. But it's really great to be able to travel to all of these places. We've gone to France, to Italy, to different parts of Asia, and who knows where we're going to go next year.
So not only are you here in the United States, you're based in Indianapolis, right?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so you're right there in the hub of everything racing. I know when the Indy 500 and everything comes to town, like you basically can't move there. You're like stuck in one place and just enjoying everything that happens around you. But you're also getting to travel everywhere. And the thing that I love best about your story, because we are both this, you are a photographer by trade.
That's
and that is what
how I got into racing. So I started going to circle track races with my dad when I was growing up. We didn't spend every Saturday night, but I'd never actually been to a sports car race until I met my now husband, my partner in this business. I was doing photography at an event that he was coaching at, and it was just Ferraris and Lamborghinis and things like that. And I met him, and yeah, that's kind of how it all started. It was photography into going to races into somehow owning a team. Not quite sure how it happened, but
I love how you go, oh, it's just Ferraris and Lamborghinis, and now we own a team, and then we travel around the world. You know, like this is like an absolute dream for most people, and you get to do it all the time. So I want you to talk to everyone about how you get your hands dirty, because, okay, everyone doesn't know the backstory, but I went to the Petit Le Mans this past year in 2023 and did all of the videos, all the recording, the production, you know, one woman team right here, walking around in the paddock. And I would stop at every single team where I saw a woman and say, can I interview you? I am doing this for my Athenian so they can find out everything about all the, you know, what women do in motorsports. And you, of course, just like jumped up and said, yes. You know, I'm down there in a second with my video camera and everything.
Never been more fun. Athenians will get to experience it all, from race cars to rockets, with our driving academy held at Atlanta Motorsports Park this year. 20 Athenians will learn how to drive like a pro. Want to learn how to fabricate rockets? Then join us in July at Fab Camp. We are looking for girls just like you in grades 6 to 12 who love everything that it takes to move the world, from working on cars to engineering rockets. Register now and join us in the clubhouse and get ready to explore, discover, and create.
So, like, you know, really talk about what it's like to be in the paddock, because there were times when it's like, and you're always, I warn the girls all the time, it's like, always have somebody watching your back. Like if you're on a camera, if you're on a phone, always have somebody that's spotting for you, because you never know when a team's going to go racing past because something's happened out on the track. So,
absolutely.
yeah, like, yeah, I absolutely love this, but everybody hasn't been behind the scenes like we have. So kind of explain it a little bit more in depth for those who don't know about it.
So at the track, there is a lot that goes on. So we have a really big team for our car. We have one car, but usually about 26 people helping it run, from the mechanics to the engineers to the team managers. We have media people there with us. I mean, it's just a giant group effort, and everybody works really hard. We have people who repair the carbon fiber. We have driver changers. There are a lot of different ways to get your hands in on it. I kind of do a little bit of, not everything. I definitely don't work on the car. I don't have that skill set, but I think being part of a team, you just have to kind of surround yourself with people who are an expert in it, and you just learn from them as you go. So there are so many different things that you can learn by just being there and just watching. And I find that to be really exhilarating, to be learning something new almost every single day, and to be surrounded by people who share your passion. And if you're sharing a passion with someone, it's a lot easier to learn about it as well. I'm not sure if I answered your question very well there, but what you were talking about with getting almost being run over by a team, luckily this last race was really, really smooth for us. So we didn't have to run back and forth to the pit lane. However, the previous 2 years at the 24 Hours of Daytona, we've had issues with the car, where we've had a gearbox failure and then an engine failure. And so the team just rushes back to the garage, and everybody is hands-on trying to fix it, trying to get it back out, because over a 24-hour race, you have a lot of opportunities to come back from a disaster and actually make a comeback. Especially in IMSA, this strategy plays a huge part. So the engineers come up with strategy, and you can get laps back and laps back. So even if you start out with 10 laps down, which is not ideal, but we have come back from that before to be on the podium. So it's just a lot of group effort and finding out what you can do to get your hands in there and really help the team.
Yeah. And it's amazing to me to watch these teams come together, because no one has just one job. Like everybody on the team, when you're watching them, when something goes into action, everybody jumps on, whether it's, one of the event people that is there, just to kind of, be there for the event, or it's a mechanic, or, it's one of the drivers, or it's the team owner. Like, it is always just buzzing. And I haven't been to a 24-hour race yet. So really kind of describe what that's like, because,
so you think 24-hour race, but really it's about 36 hours or a little bit more. So you get to the track around 7 a.m. and you have to do inspections, because all of the cars are inspected before they go out on track to make sure everybody is not only safe, but they're legal as well. Just make sure everybody's on the same page there. And then you have the buildup of all of the fanfare. So it's great because IMSA is really accessible to all of the fans. We have a great fan walk and an introduction where you can actually go out and you can touch the cars. You can be right up close to them. And that is really wonderful. And then you have obviously the warm-up laps, and then you go into racing. So, and then at that point, it is 24 hours of flat out racing. So you might think, oh, it's an endurance race. You probably better take it easy. These cars these days are built so well that it's literally 24 hours of a sprint race. And you can push and you can push and you can push, but it really comes down to that last maybe hour and a half. You have to see where you are then, and then kind of arrange your strategy from there. So, and then after that, you still have to pack up. So you're there for 36 hours and it's just nonstop. And with our cars, you stop about every 35 to 42 minutes, because that's about what you can do on a fuel load. So every 35 to 42 minutes, everybody in the pit box is getting ready. They're gearing up. They're getting their helmets on, and we do fuel every time. And then sometimes there's a driver change. Sometimes there is a little bit of work on the car. Maybe the track has changed. So you have to adapt the tire pressures, and you do tire changes, and maybe you have to change like the angle of the wing gurney, or if you might have gone off through the grass maybe a couple of times, you have to clean out the air ducts, make sure that the air is go through so it doesn't get too hot. So it's a lot. It's very intense for 24 hours of racing. It's just nonstop. People are like, when do you sleep? Well, you don't really get to sleep. So if you're a mechanic, you might get to lie down and take like close your eyes for a few minutes and get a little cat nap. So actually the pit lane officials this year, they walked around and they had a little bitty trophy that they gave out. And one of our guys, he got the best pit lane nap trophy. So that might be one of the coolest trophies that we've gotten, other than obviously winning.
That's so funny. So the drivers who are in the car, and this is really intense too, because everyone doesn't realize the difference between, oh, I'm just going to go do my shenanigans out there on the public roads and be, raise a little bit of craziness and, get a little bit of adrenaline going. Okay. That's a totally different level of adrenaline and endurance and what your body has to go through. I mean, these drivers are in that seat for usually, isn't it 3 to 4 hours, or what was the time change for your drivers?
So one stint is about 42 minutes. So and most of the time you do at least a double stint. So you're in for about an hour and a half. Or if you are Christian, who finished for us, he did a triple stint at the end. So he did about 2 hours straight at the very end of the race when the racing was the hardest. And there's so much physicality that goes in it, especially at Daytona. These cars produce so much G-force, and especially on the banking. The first year we did this race, we've changed it since then, but there's a roll bar right next to your head, and we didn't have any padding on it. So the drivers were like kind of head up against it, and it rubbed the paint off of every single driver's helmet. So if you kind of think about how much pressure goes into that, and like the the bumping and the vibrations to take paint off of a helmet, it's pretty intense.
Yeah.
But Connor, we had a 17-year-old Connor Zilic joined us this year, and he did a fabulous job. I think he said his max heart rate for the stints was about 180. So their average heart rate is probably, I don't know, 150-ish for about 2 hours. So they burn a lot of calories. We have a physio
that's pretty intense.
That they're well hydrated, that they're eating properly because they need the protein to rebuild, they need the carbs to stay energetic. So there's even a person that's specifically in charge of making sure drivers and crew are well fueled as well as the car. So
yeah, because they have to keep going through this entire thing, and even as they're doing the driver changes, they might get to take a short little nap, but I know their mind is still spinning. I saw some pictures from the drivers at IMSA, and they just look like almost like they were zombies by the end of it. Like their eyes were just gray.
Right. They might get about an hour of a nap, but I mean, that's not really a lot to regenerate after working so hard for so long. And then you just keep going and going and going. And it's a lot to ask, but that's what they do. That's what they're there for, right?
The launch of a captivating book series, Addie's Amazing Adventures. This groundbreaking series is for young girls that are budding inventors, engineers, and designers. Both of these series follow the inspiring journey of Addie, a young girl with a passion for inventing cars, planes, and boats that move the world. There is something for everyone, namely charms for young adults and Get Your Hands Dirty for children. These books are aimed at empowering young girls to break barriers in the traditionally male-dominated fields of science, technology, research, engineering, art, and mathematics. Guess what? You can download the first book of the Charm series for free at Athenian.org. Check out all of our books available for purchase in our store at Athenian.org.
And a lot of people don't realize, but they actually call race car drivers pilots.
Yes.
And is almost like being in a cockpit of a jet. So I guess that's probably like one of the best analogies for someone who's never been near these cars or really understands them. We are watching Top Gun, and the way the G-forces pull on those jets is basically the same way for your LMP2 race cars.
Absolutely. And they have to be able to focus not only on the track ahead of them, but the cars around them. And then they have to be able to see the screen in front of them as well, because there's a lot of data that goes through on the screen. And it actually really does look like a cockpit as well. So there are a lot of buttons. I'll have to send you a picture of that later.
So how has this whole transition of going from being a photographer to being a team owner to traveling around the world? I know a lot of people are like, oh, that's such a jet setter's life. And then, and I always tell this to everyone, I come home from a race and I have a race hangover. It's not from drinking. It is from being at the racetrack and being so on for so long. So kind of talk about like just what it's like, and you're a mom.
Doesn't really let me have any kind of a race hangover, so it's just she's go go go. I think she's kind of our little good luck charm, honestly, because the first year we won it, I was pregnant with her, and then she's been at every race event since, except the first one because she was only a month old. But there's so much. A lot has changed since I was a photographer. So I actually used to manage an optometry practice, and I did photography on the side. And I kind of pulled things from both of those into starting my own business. So especially the optometry practice is where it was a very small business. And I try to keep the business that we have now very similar to that, where it's a very family friendly, like it feels like a family. So I want to create an environment where people want to come to work. And I think we really have a great group of people this year, and people, they do feel like family. They feel like friends, and they want to come and they want to work together, because in this world, you spend more time sometimes with the people you work with than you do with your actual family. So I know one of our drivers, Ryan, and our engineer, Scott, they saw each other more than they did their significant others last year, because they work on multiple teams together. So it's really important to be able to get along with the people you work with. As for traveling, I have always loved traveling. It's a need. I can't not do it. So finding a career which allows me to travel not only all around the US. So we went to California last year. We go up to New York. We go to Florida. There's some in Wisconsin, and it's a beautiful area of Wisconsin. And I always try to take a few hours or a day to go and see what's around. But not only there, but I get to go to, I've been to France and to Italy. Last year I went to Italy twice, I think it was. And it's just amazing to be able to see so many different parts of the world, and you still see the same people in the paddock that you did in the US. So it's just this really tight knit community where you just happen to travel all over the world to see the same people over and over again. But
So talk about the IMSA schedule, because it basically started at the Daytona 24, the roar before the 24, and it goes until Petit Le Mans in October. I mean, you're on the road a lot.
yes, not only that, but we have testing also. So we leave in, what is today, the 5th? So we leave in 6 days for another test down in Sebring. So our next test is the 12 hours of Sebring. We test for that. So we bring 2 cars down there, one for driver development and one for car development. So because we have so many chassis that we can work on, the team is able to really focus on both driver development and car development to make sure we have the best program possible. And after Sebring, we go to, you can put me on the spot now. I think it's Watkins Glen next. So the 6 hours of Watkins Glen in June, and then we go to Motorsport in Canada. So it's the first time that I'll have gone to Motorsport in an LMP2, which is great. The first 2 endurance races, the Motorsport is actually the first sprint race. So it's 2 hours and 40 minutes. So it's with 2 drivers. And then after that, we go to Road America in Wisconsin, which is one of the most beautiful tracks in the entire world. It's fast, it's flowy, it's gorgeous. I love it. And then that's also a sprint race. Then we head back to the Enduros, and that is Indianapolis is the next one, if I remember correctly, in September. And then you go to Petit Le Mans in October. We have a slightly shorter schedule than some of the other classes, but it works really well for us because we're testing at every single event between them as well.
When you've got this big family working together as a team, like you really do start to become glue and really help each other, and you grow watching each other too, which I think is a fantastic part. So
Absolutely.
How is your daughter growing up with all of these guys around her helping her?
I told her we were going to the workshop today, so she's off playing with other family members right now. She loves it. She calls them all of my friends. She's like, I'm going to the racetrack to see all of my friends, or we'll be at home. And she was like, I want to go to the airplane. Where are we going, Evelyn? Airport. Okay, well, where are we going? Racetrack to see all my friends. So, she loves to play on the simulator. She loves to see the race cars. If she sees a video of our LMP2 car, she'll point at it and go, that's my car.
Yeah.
So it's a good environment. Everybody is so friendly towards her. I mean, I'm partial, and I think it's because she's great, but everybody is just really good about bringing her in and making sure that she's safe and happy, and they play with her and talk to her. So it just continues that family vibe, in my opinion. I'm not sure she's very helpful when she's working on the cars, but if there's a hole, she's probably going to put a bolt in it, whether it belongs there or not. So might take a side pot off occasionally and shake out a few extra bolts, but she's having fun.
Kind of have to watch that before you go through the tech at the track.
But everybody at tech well, so they call her IMSA baby because she goes to all of the events, and so they always stop us when they see her, and they're like, "Oh, it's IMSA baby!" So
that's awesome.
It's a lot of fun.
Okay, so you'll have to get a picture of her with her hands dirty after some point of helping her dad with the car, so that we can
have videos of her as well, because we have such a good video team, and they're obviously obsessed with her as well because she's so adorable. But there are videos of her working on like vintage Porsches, just turning, and actually she does a really good job with what they would call a spanner and we would call a wrench. So I have videos of her from 6 months ago turning a wrench on a car and actually doing a pretty good job with it as well. She's 2,
okay, so
already good.
My new children's book series coming out called Get Your Hands Dirty. We're going to have to get a video of the 2 of you guys reading this book when it gets printed at the end of this month. So yeah, she'll be like, oh yeah, I already know this story, Loxley. Like, this is me.
Absolutely. I thought about writing some children's books about her experiences at the racetrack just to show other kids too. So
okay, we might have to have a joint Addie and your daughter book so that we can look at both of them in this whole series together. Yeah, because Addie's got to have friends. I mean, she's a 5-year-old. You can't have a 5-year-old without friends.
Absolutely.
So, and that's the great thing too about this whole industry that I absolutely love is I go out to the racetrack and I meet all of these women. From being at Petite Le Mans, I met you, I met Alex. I was hanging out with Sheena and Catherine. It's just like this is such a great group of strong, fierce, independent women that I know are great role models for my Athenians and for all the little girls out there. So thank you for helping me with our girls at track and then coming on for our very first broadcast of Get Your Hands Dirty.
Oh, it's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Get Your Hands Dirty. Our shop is filled with guests who can't wait to share their stories with you. Join us again and help us spread the word about our Athenians Club, books, activities, and great guests.